Ladies and gentlemen, the news just broke that China just missed its growth target last quarter. And this is a very rare thing because they rarely miss their growth target. And not only did they miss it, it slowed down to one of the slowest growth ever in modern China history. Does this mean the end of the Chinese economic miracle? Well, let me just give you a deep dive because this is a serious implication because the world is highly interconnected with China, especially Singapore and Malaysia. Let's watch on till the end as I give you the analysis. So it does look like the Chinese have missed the economic growth target, and this certainly make everybody worried in China because they have been slowing down and slowing down and slowing down, and this certainly could spell the end of the Chinese economic miracle. So the news came out that the Chinese economic growth hit a 4.3% last quarter, and this is below the forecast of 4.5%. And this is a very rare thing to miss the target. And this is certainly something that is worrying because they are facing headwinds, and I'll show you where the headwinds coming from. So the breakdown of the economic growth will tell you where the growth is coming from and where the slowdown is coming from. And let's come from the bottom. Of course, the property bubble bursting in China certainly caused a continuous drag on the economic growth. So it was negative 18%, and the fixed asset investment is also slowing down, and these two are dragging down the economy. Retail sales so near zero, 1%. Industrial production was pretty healthy, 5.3%. Export growth was at a phenomenal 27%. So the Chinese export is still very strong, but is dragged down by domestic problem. And this is certainly a case of a property bubble bursting. And once the property bubble bursts, it has got very long lingering effect. So I remember when the property bubble burst in 2021, I was telling everybody it could last for 10 years, and some people were laughing at me and things like that. Well, today is already 5 years already, and there's no sign of recovery. So the property drag is very serious. The 18% down has also lead to further price drop, and nobody wants to buy property anymore because they expected prices to continue to fall. And this looks pretty similar to the Japanese real estate bubble burst in 1990s, and it lasted for 3 decades. So the Japanese property bubble burst lasted for 3 decades of economic stagnation. And the question is, will this happen to China? Well, I'm going to give you more insights. So when I was in China, I was actively looking around. To be frank, in the major cities, you don't see those what we call 烂尾楼, which means buildings that are left empty, nobody is completing it and things like that. But if you go to the second tier cities like Xi'an and maybe the other outskirts of cities like Chengdu, you do see some of these buildings that are left uncompleted for 5, 6 years and so on. So this is quite a serious matter. So just take a look at the history of Japan. So Japan also have a phenomenal property bubble that was inflating beyond economic foundation, and suddenly it bursts, and the household wealth just suddenly vaporizes, and as a result it drags down consumer and investment, and the whole economy just went into a stagnation for 3 decades. So in Japan, when the property bubble burst, they went stagnated economically for 30 years, and there were persistent deflation for a long time. And by the way, that is still happening in China as well. And nominal GDP actually went stagnated at around 1% growth or 2% growth for many, many years. Well, in China, the situation is very different. The Japanese crash kind of experience did happen in the property sector in China as well. But the Chinese growth, despite the collapse of the property sector, is still at 4% over. So that's a very different set of background. Well, the main reason is culturally it's two different countries. The Chinese are a lot more hungrier They are really, really hungry and they are not resigning to faith. And the national response is okay, one sector is down, let's drive the other sector. And what we have lost, we must make it back. So on the ground, I've seen this. The people realize that a lot of my wealth has been destroyed. I will make it back and I want to make it back. And they drive themselves into a fierce productivity and unfortunately sometimes also terrible competition. But this kind of hunger is not something that the Japanese can rival with. So just to give you some illustration, they are making huge bets and making huge progress and now world leading in a couple of sectors that we all will recognize. Number one, green energy. They are now clearly the number one in green energy. So in terms of solar panels, solar manufacturing, wind turbines, clean energy, they are world number one right now. Nobody in the world can beat them in this. And they filed close to 75% of all clean energy patents right now in the world. And in the year 2000, they were only 5% of all clean energy patent. Now they are 75%. So once upon a time, they were copycats and everybody were laughing at them. Now they are creators and innovators. That's pretty amazing. So a lot of the investment are now into green energy. You go to any China cities right now, you see clear blue skies and it's beautiful. The air is nice to breathe and things like that. And that's largely because they are big time into green energy that's leading the world right now. In terms of batteries and electric vehicles, they are clearly leading the world. And right now, they produce 70% of all EVs. In fact, most of Tesla vehicles are probably also made in China because everywhere I go in China, I see Tesla factories everywhere. So they are manufacturing and producing a lot of batteries. They're supporting the cars as well. So many of the Europeans and Japanese vehicle manufacturers are very afraid of their EVs. And clearly, if you see on the road, I think 50-60% of their cars are all EVs right now because they were labeled with a green number plate versus those that are running on petrol or diesel, there will be a blue number plate. So they are really leading this part of the world, and clearly we are all lagging behind compared to that of China. And they are very good in taking advantage of crisis. In pandemic, yes, they suffered badly. They're probably even the one that started it. But as a result, they turned the crisis into a powerful industry. They are producing the global PPE equipment, medical gears, and so on. And I'll give you another one, which is the energy shock. So the energy shock that just happened, and it's still happening right now because Donald Trump just restarted the war with Iran. So everyone suddenly realized that petrol prices, diesel prices, petroleum prices are all going up. We got to depend on green energy. So here comes China and says, I'm ready. Please buy my green cars. Please buy my green solutions. And clearly, everybody is now adopting green technology. China is winning big time in this. So China is also winning big time in the AI boom. They are powerful builders of data centers, they have batteries, they have power solutions, and so on. They're winning big time as well in this area. So clearly, they are going to lead in this space as well. Now, the Chinese are not just growing well in China in terms of going into these new areas, frontier technologies, but they are expanding themselves rapidly across the world. They are big time into Middle East, Africa, Southeast Asia. We can see them with our own eyes. They're everywhere. They're into Central Asia, Latin America. So they are not really into US, maybe less in Europe, but the rest of the world, they are everywhere. In fact, the Africans super love the Chinese. They hate the Europeans and they hate the Americans because they say that the Europeans and Americans colonized them and enslave them, but the Chinese come and help them build up their country. So you will see actually quite a lot of Chinese companies right now in Africa doing really very well. And we can see them coming into Southeast Asia, providing very innovative, cost competitive, and very high quality services. So clearly, their industrial strength and their manufacturing strength, their business strength is very strong and they are expanding globally as well. So they are a force really to reckon with, and I think they are going to be more powerful in this area. When they come into a new geographical area, they don't just bring their business, their equipment, they bring money, they bring credit, they bring continuity. Whereas US right now is just volatility, instability because of President Asiao. So I think that's something that we are clearly can see right now who is a more stable partner to work with. But talking about US, the US still lead in terms of the capital market. Nobody will think of listing an IPO in China, right? Everybody wants to IPO in the US, in NASDAQ, and so on. And US probably still have the most innovative solutions in the world. The, the Silicon Valley and the research institution like Stanford University, Harvard, and MIT are still producing world leading cutting edge technology, and the best startups are still coming out of US as well. Their universities are still leading across the world. And the rule of law, I think, is still very strong and respected there. But the Chinese clearly are now coming up in leading technology, frontier technology. They have outright said that we're not here to replace US. We're here to carve a niche for ourselves, but that niche is very big. Now, the surprising thing that I just heard is that the Chinese central banks have just announced that they are willing to internationalize the renminbi. Now, that is a red line that they were trying not to cross for many years because they want control over monetary policy. But I think they recognize that this might be an opportunity of lifetime to become the reserve currency of the world. So right now they are creating many solutions to allow their currency gradually to be adopted for trades within China and their trading partners. So this will clearly diminish the role of US dollars. I think it will not replace it over the next 1 or 2 years or even 5 years. But over time, more and more of this were to start to be adopted, then clearly the US dollar might have some vulnerability if the Americans don't wake up from all the chaos that President Donald Trump has created. So my key takeaway is this. I've been traveling a lot into China, talking to business people. I've traveled to at least 10 over cities right now. And it's very clear to me that yes, economically it's slowing down because they are hit by the property sector bursting, but they are not sitting back and resigned to their fate. They are picking up, they are leading in their frontier technologies, and they're going to be challenging the reign of US for sure. But this is where I just want to say we don't need to place the bets, on one place or another place. I think for me, what I'll do is that in terms of the capital market, is I'll still bet on the more reliable one, which is US. But in terms of businesses, I think I would love to expand my businesses to work with Chinese companies, and that is why I'll be doing much more deep dive into China. So this weekend, I'm flying to China again. This will be my third trip within 2 months. And I'm going to be seeing the leading AI companies of China and the rest of the world over there in Shanghai. And I'll keep you posted on some of this development. I hope to be able to adopt some of this leading technology and bring them to Singapore and even to Malaysia as well. And I think that this would be a wonderful, fortune changing opportunity for a lifetime. So I'm not going to miss it. So I'm going there this weekend. So keep yourself posted on my updates. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my next video or my live stream.